My mother kept a kitchen garden in our backyard in Montreal. Tomatoes, beans, herbs she grew from seeds saved from the previous season. She understood the entire cycle, from seed to harvest to seed again, as a domestic fact, not a political statement. By the time my daughter was born in 2022, that knowledge was genuinely unusual. The connection between food and the soil that produced it had been abstracted, for most people, to something that happened elsewhere, managed by others, and delivered. By 2026, 4 corporations, BASF, Bayer, Corteva, and Syngenta, controlled approximately 60% of the global commercial seed supply. The consolidation had proceeded steadily through decades of mergers. Monsanto had been absorbed into Bayer in 2018. This concentration gave a small number of companies extraordinary influence over what crops were planted, what genetics were deployed, and what chemical inputs those genetics were optimized to work with, inputs that the same companies often also sold. The soil story was the one that got less coverage than it deserved. Industrial monoculture had been degrading topsoil globally for 70 years by 2026. The UNCCD estimated that 33% of the Earth's soil was moderately to highly degraded. Topsoil formation happens at a rate of roughly an inch per 500 years. The rate of depletion in agricultural systems was orders of magnitude faster. The system was drawing down an account that could not be replenished on any human timescale. The Ogallala Aquifer, which underlies much of the American Great Plains and irrigated a substantial fraction of U.S. grain and beef production, was being drawn down in 2026 at rates that would exhaust it, in many areas, within decades. The communities and agricultural operations dependent on it knew this. The water was cheap, heavily subsidized, and the political will to price it at its actual replacement cost, which is approximately impossible, was absent. The nutrition dimension was documented and largely ignored. Industrial food production maximized yield, calories, and volume at the cost of micronutrient density. The nutritional content of commonly consumed vegetables had been measurably declining since the 1950s. Iron, calcium, vitamins C and B2 all showed significant declines in agricultural produce across multiple peer-reviewed studies. The food system was, in a precise sense, producing more food that was less food. Regenerative agriculture existed as a practice and a movement in 2026. Cover cropping, no-till farming, polyculture systems that built soil rather than depleting it, these were documented to work. The economic barriers to adoption were real. Transitioning from conventional to regenerative systems requires several years of reduced yield and upfront investment in practices and equipment. Subsidies in every major agricultural economy were structurally designed to reward conventional production. The transition happened, eventually, through several mechanisms simultaneously. The Ogallala Aquifer crisis forced land use changes in the Central Plains through the 2030s and 2040s, not by policy, by simple depletion. Climate disruption made monoculture vulnerability too expensive to insure, which drove diversification in specific regions. And the EU farm-to-fork strategy and its successors created subsidy structures that rewarded regenerative practices in European agriculture at a scale that influenced global supply chains. In 2103, the agricultural system is more diverse, less concentrated, and more locally adapted than the 2026 baseline. It also feeds roughly 11 billion people at adequate nutritional levels, which is a genuine achievement that required extraordinary technological, agronomic, and policy innovation. The soil loss from the industrial era is a permanent liability. The aquifer depletion is irreversible on any human timescale. We are farming on the margins of what was left. My mother's kitchen garden produced seeds. Those seeds were not patented. They were not subject to licensing agreements. They could be saved, replanted, shared with neighbors, adapted over generations to the specific conditions of one backyard in Montreal. That capacity, seed saving as a domestic practice, had been largely eliminated from commercial agriculture by 2026. It survived in the seed library movement, which I think of as one of the more quietly heroic things that happened during the corporate consolidation years. There is a variety of tomato my mother grew that I have never been able to find again. I don't know its name, she just called it the good one. I don't know if it exists anywhere in a seed library. I don't know if it was lost in the consolidation decades. I know it tasted like something. Like the soil it came from and the summer that grew it, and the hands that saved it from year to year. That specific tomato is probably gone. It was not, in the ledger of losses, the most consequential, but it was mine.